The claim I'm responding to is the death penalty is an ineffective form of punishment. The opponent's secondary claim is that the death penalty is very costly to taxpayers, and the death penalty does not deter murder crime more than any other forms of punishment. My position is that the death penalty is an effective form of punishment. Some terms I'll clear up is the JFA, which is the Justice for All, and it's a criminal justice reform organization, and another term is justice, which is the administering of deserved punishment or reward, and plea bargaining, which is the process through which a criminal gets a reduced sentence in exchange for providing help to the police. My response to the first claim, the death penalty is very costly to taxpayers, is that the opponent failed to supply all the information. According to Dudley Sharp, the death penalty resource director for the JFA, he stated that the JFA has made estimates that a life without parole case will cost 1.2 to 3.6 million more than equivalent death penalty cases. He also states that although the upfront cost of a death penalty case is significantly higher than a life without parole case, the cost over time for a life without parole case also becomes significantly higher than the death penalty case. And also, according to Time magazine, the average cell costs $24,000 per year, and the maximum security costs, which most of the prisoners that would have served the death penalty are staying in, costs $75,000 per year. And so over time, the maximum security cells and the prisoners that accompany it can use up to hundreds of thousands of taxpayers' dollars. The opponent also makes a generalization that all death penalty cases do not effectively use tax dollars as well as other forms of punishment. According to the JFA, a life without parole prisoner stays in prison for an average of 30 to 40 years, while the annual cost of incarceration is $40,000 to $50,000. And annual costs can also increase based on medical costs, injury, or death to or by inmates, and the risk or perceived risk of escape. So life without parole case costs at least the same, if not more, than the death penalty cases over time. My response to the secondary claim that the death penalty does not deter murder crime more than other forms of government. My response is that the opponent assumes that the death penalty's only purpose is to deter crime. One of the main purposes of the death penalty is to ensure justice. In 2007, a man named Stephen Hayes invaded a home in Connecticut and strangled a woman named Jennifer Hawk Pettit and tied her two daughters on a bed and left them to die in a gasoline-fueled fire. Hayes was sentenced to death in 2010, and Pettit's sister stated, "I guess I feel a huge sense of relief that it was over. I guess I was glad that they came to the decision that they did. I felt like if any crime ever called for a death penalty, this probably did." Another purpose is to provide an incentive for the police. If the prisoner is sentenced to death, then he or she has the strongest possible incentive to get his or her sentence reduced by using plea bargaining, and therefore this can be a useful tool for the police. The death penalty's purpose does not solely rely on the deterrence of crime, but also includes the implement of justice and an incentive for the police. So in conclusion, the death penalty is an effective alternative to the life without parole cases. Thank you. Here's my app. Thank you.
All right, the structural things are all fine. You list the main and secondary claims. transitioned that first point pretty clearly. The cost issue I thought was challenged pretty effectively by arguing that there are costs associated with life without parole that haven't been looked at completely, and you do a good job presenting what the counterclaims on those costs would be. I do think you need a little bit more contrast information with the costs that the advocate was talking about concerning implementation of the death penalty, so that we can get some numerical comparison, because ultimately we're going to have to be looking at those numbers and see how they work. You do have one statistic that does give a cost comparison, and like I said, I thought you had several good counterclaims here that talked about the the reason that the long-term imprisonment is actually going to cost a greater amount of money. There's not really any direct argument about the advocate's calculation of costs or the evidence that they use, so you're relying primarily on a counterclaim here. It's a good counterclaim and it's directly applicable. On the second point, I think that you go just a little bit off tangent. You do have the right idea. If this was a policy argument, for instance, arguing that the goal of the death penalty is not necessarily to deter crime, but to, in fact, provide some other functions, one justice and one to reduce costs or create a more effective administration of justice system by kind of encouraging people to plea bargain and get through the trial process more effectively. I think those are both good claims, but the first one is definitely a value argument, and the second one, although it's a factual claim, doesn't really directly deal with the issue of deterrence. I'm not exactly sure why you shied away from the deterrence argument, because there is plenty of grounds out there to talk about on that. There's not really much analysis of the advocate's evidence on this point, so you're primarily just providing a counterclaim on this point. All right, thank you.